On this episode, Merschman Fertilizer President Henry Merschman joins us to talk about fertilizer industry trends. Hear Ben's takeaways from Neal Kinsey's Soil and Fertility Seminar. Joe explains why you should choose Merschman Seeds. Find out more about soybean varieties that fit your area best. You can also listen to us on all major podcast platforms.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe, Season 3, Episode number 30. Today we have Ben and Turk and my brother Henry. Henry, we brought you in here because of the fact that there's to give us a fertilizer update. Could you give us a recap of what's going on in nitrogen, phosphate, and potash?
Sure, Joe. And before I start, I want to make it perfectly clear that when they asked me to do this, I said I'd only do it on one condition, that I could leave before Joe does his corny joke.
That's a reasonable request.
So, no, actually, there's a lot going on in the fertilizer right now, and we'll start with nitrogen. And when the corn prices go up, obviously, demand for inputs go up, and so thus the nitrogen prices have been going up. And then when we recently had this cold snap that went all the way down south, it took a lot of fertilizer plants out. They either couldn't get the energy, the gas to produce. Some of them sold gas back to the supplier. For an instance, I know one plant that was paying $3 a unit for natural gas. They sold it back. They chose to sell it back to the gas company for $200 a unit. So they were making a lot of money there. Well, then they got to bring all these plants back up, and a lot of them are coming up slow. They have low inventories, and thus these prices have come up significantly in recent months. And so that just puts a strain on the whole system. And we're 6 weeks away from planting corn, and logistics are going to be tough to get product in place in a lot of instances. The Mississippi River is opening up a month late. The Illinois River has now been shut down because of the cold weather or had very restricted traffic. So again, logistics is huge. On the phosphate, they had such a big fall. A lot of people think they were up 40%. Talking to the producers, they said that they've been on the floor, and they're still on the floor. They're shipping product that had orders that were put in December and January. They're behind the 8 ball. Warehouses are empty.
So when you say on the floor, they don't have any excess inventory. As fast as they make it,
as soon as it hits the floor, it goes right out.
Okay.
And so they have not built any inventories, which they typically do. They had this dumping suit thing with the Moroccans and the Russians and so forth, and so there's been zero Russian and Moroccan product come in. Other countries have tried to bring product in, but generally speaking, MAP is the big predominant phosphate user, and everybody likes MAP, but a lot of these importers that are bringing product in cannot make MAP as easily as they can DAP, but DAP is not as well used in the United States, so there's more DAP coming over here, and so there's just a void there. And I just recently, just 10 minutes ago, picked up that the prices of phosphate moved up so much that now, even with the tariffs, the Moroccans are starting to try to bring a little bit of product in and pay the tariff because their netback is so good yet. They're bringing in some triple, which is not MAP or DAP. It's an odd product, but they're also bringing stuff in through Canada, and they think it's going to flow back down from Canada into the U.S. So this will probably relieve some pressure on the phosphate. Lastly, the potash. Again, we had a big fall. Potash prices have gone up significantly. Recently, what we saw out there is a lot of farmers were trying to buy 22 inputs, and they were trying to lock stuff in, lock the price of the corn or beans, sell that, lock their input price in. So there was such a demand that people wanted to keep buying and buying and buying and lock stuff in that the potash companies finally said, just raised the price high enough so they just quit getting people calling them and wanting product. And the last increase was $50. And because, and a lot of farmers ask me, when are you going to quit raising the price? And my standard answer is when you quit asking for a price. And, you kind of laugh about it, but it's true. That's what happens a lot. But in a nutshell, demand's going to still stay strong this spring, and I think we're going to have spot outages at a lot of locations just because we're so far behind in getting the stuff filled up, the warehouses and so forth. But I would also say probably the good news is they've raised the prices so much now, we're starting to see some resistance. And I think when resistance will start building some inventories a little bit better.
So what goes up must come down, or vice versa.
What cures high prices? High prices.
Yep.
So a lot of P&K got put on last year with the fall that we had.
Yes.
So which of the nitrogen products can you forecast are going to be in the most tight supply? Is liquid going to be an issue? Is it going to be urea? Is it going to be AMS? Like what do you think locally and widespread? What do you think if we're going to see shortages on stuff?
We had a big ammonia fall, but the ammonia's tight in the world, they claim, and we're seeing, some plants. I talked to a guy, a production plant, the sales rep, and he said they've got, for urea, for example, they said they're sold out well into May before they can take any new orders. Partly because their plants have been down and so forth, and the UAN, I think that's come up quite a bit in price, but there's a lot of storage out there. But the other thing that happens with a lot of these imports, if the U.S. price stays down, which we were really low last summer, and then go through the winter and prices kind of stayed down. If they keep the price down through about this time, February and early March stuff, the imports they can't come in. It's too late to line up. And so sometimes, I know there's some large producers out there that are very smart about that. They don't like to see the prices go up too much because it invites imports, and then it runs the prices down at the wrong time. And so I think there's a little bit of politics played in some of this also. But when you ask, so the question is nitrogen, they're all, there's a demand for all of them, and all of them have kind of gone up in together. So there's really not one that's plentiful and one's really short. They're all kind of snug.
But Henry, you had said in the past times that we've had here that we have a lot of excess capacity in nitrogen. So even if we take a little bit out because the plant's shut down because of cold weather or whatever, they have a tremendous ability to produce.
They do have a tremendous ability to produce, but then when we got $5.50 corn, I think I may have mentioned this last time I was in, there's land all around the world that that they can produce corn now. So it's land that's not being used right now, and all of a sudden, okay, this land I can make money, $5.50 corn. So the demand for fertilizer worldwide picks up for inputs, and it puts pressure, so it takes some of that slack out of that excess. You follow what I'm saying?
I know
and
exactly.
It may not be in the U.S., it may be in other countries. But then as soon as that price drops, boom, that land goes right back out, and then that's when you get.
But you take the players that have been in, various folks that, particularly family-owned retail stores and stuff like that. They've been through these cycles before. They're used to these cycles. They prepare for these cycles. Is that not true? Because, I know a lot of folks that, do a really good job. They have storage. They have capacity. They take a little bit of the highs and lows out of these markets, don't they?
In 2008, 2009, prices like potash, for example, it was, from what it currently is today, it was probably 2.5 times higher than what it is today. So, although these prices have come up, they're nothing like they were in 2008, 2009. You had potash that was selling $900 to $1,000 a ton. The big joke was PCS is now Nutrien, it's called Nutrien now, but Bill Doyle was the president and CEO, and I knew Bill through the years, and they said that Bill got a call one day when they were mining potash, and they were selling potash for $950,000. And he said, Bill, we got a problem. He said, what's that? We hit a vein of gold. He says, don't worry, just keep digging through. You'll get through it. And there was a lot of truth. They were making so much money at that time. So we're still, the prices are up, but they're nothing like they were in 2008
And they came from below cost of production.
In some instances of some products, they were at or below cost. Yeah.
So not all bad news, but it ain't all great news, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ben, you've been kind of locked up in a room all week, basically talking to one of the top, or listening to a podcast or a webinar on some of the best fertility knowledge people that are out there. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask you a question that we have from one of our watchers.
Yeah. So this week, I attended a webinar on soil fertility, like what you talked about. Neal Kinsey is the name of the person that put this webinar on. He owns his own soil sampling and consulting firm out of Southeast Missouri, and he works with all crops, and his main push is how to balance soils. And I've heard Turk talk about balancing soils. I've taken classes at Iowa State on fertility and everything, but I've never had anybody put things into perspective the way that Neal did. And I think I just nicked the very top of the iceberg on learning about how he balances things and how important getting your soils balanced out, having the calcium, magnesium, and having the calcium, magnesium, potash, phosphorus, everything in the right percentages makes a huge deal on building soil life and having super productive crops.
I heard you talking about sulfur a little bit too. The ratio of sulfur to nitrogen is there's a slightly different recommendation now.
Yeah, so where I have talked in the past about a 1:10 to 1:12 ratio of nitrogen to sulfur, he is talking about the top producers that are growing 250 bushel corn and 80, 90 bushel beans. It's a 1:5 or a 1:4 ratio on nitrogen to sulfur. So we should be using a lot more sulfur, which is something that we talked about with Harry, and it's something that we talked about on other episodes. We should be using more sulfur to unlock these super high yields that we're shooting for.
Henry, you've seen a trend in more sulfur being used.
Yeah, sulfur just continues to just go like that. Absolutely. Matter of fact, we had we got a product called Amidas, and it's a 4000 5.5 sulfur, and the producer Yara, they had called us here recently and said, we got this other product. I can't remember the exact analysis, but it was a lower nitrogen, higher sulfur, and they said, well, we think that you need to, that's too far. You got to get the ratio closer, and that's why they're making this other product and trying it out and pushing it, because they're starting to see that. And I was like, God, we just got everybody used to this product, and now we got to look like we might have to switch somebody or start switching to a different ratio.
Yeah.
So you might be in sync, actually.
But it must be the trend, because it was out of the blue. They come to us and was talking to us about it. They're just in the last 6 weeks actually.
Yeah.
Ben, one of the folks contacted us through our website, and the question was, if we experience a hot, dry summer, which soybean varieties would you recommend?
Depending on where we're at, for variety-wise, there's a couple different routes that we can go for that direction. But what we shoot for when we have drought-prone soils, we look for soybeans that are tall and very bushy so that we shade rows. We always try to get into narrower row situations. So if that's an option, we always push for narrower rows. But products like Mohawks and the 2.8 are a very wide, bushy bean. They have high stress tolerances. If you have to get earlier than that, the Cheyennes work east to west really, really well. They're a fairly decent bushy bean. Kennedy's is probably my top bean in the mid 3.6. In the Enlist system, the Trumans in the LLGT 27 system are extremely stress tolerant. They belong in droughty areas. They can handle things of that nature. And then once we get into the group 4s, the Atlanta's probably the tallest, bushiest, best stress tolerant bean that we have in that range.
Yeah, and all of those soybeans will work on when there's not stress either.
Correct.
But they give you an advantage when you do have stress.
Correct.
One of the keys to that to go along with what Ben had to say there is, if you're expecting that, or if you have really droughty soils that you're trying to work on, it's not necessarily getting the highest population you can either, because too many plants can actually take away from yield as well, because that soil's trying to keep those plants alive. You only need that 100,000 plants. So at the end, don't go out there and put in 160, 180,000, thinking that you need a lot more plants for that droughty area, because it will bite you in the butt and hurt you more than it helps you.
Yep, I think I'd say coverage, getting narrow rows, because I've seen 40,000 in a drought year out yield the 130, 140,000 in the same side by side.
When we first started recommending the lower populations, we had a test plot here not very far from our office, and by mistake we forgot to change the plates when we were doing the test plot, and we planted the soybeans with the same plates that we planted corn. We didn't change the gears, and so we only put on 75,000 that year. It was a very, very dry year, and it was 2005 if I remember right, and it was the highest yielding plot that I harvested that year, planted at 75,000.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting anybody do that. I'm just saying that in a drought year, lower populations can actually help you maintain yield.
And then the flip side to it is, when you go with lower populations, you got to be pretty aggressive on your weed control.
Yep.
Because your shading effect is one of the reasons why you plant higher populations for weed control. So you're going to lose a little bit on that side. So you got to be aggressive, because Mother Nature never wastes sunshine. Something will grow there, and it's usually a weed if you don't have a soybean plant.
You get that nice bushy plant that Ben's recommended, and you use the Enlist soybean system, you've got all your bases covered.
Turkey, you've been involved in webinars too this week.
Yeah, this week the Top Producer Summit had a virtual meeting this week on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, and so I spent all of those days attending all the seminars that I could on the virtual classes, and they just had a tremendous amount of information. I was very, very impressed with the quality of the speakers and the information that was presented, and it's too much. It'd be too long for me to try and even cover part of it, but it was really good conferences to be on, and again, all virtual, and so it worked really, really well.
Well, I think the little bit I got from you is there's potential change on the horizon in farming. There's no question about it. I mean, with different ways that the current administration wants to push the envelope, you might say.
The Biden administration is going to have an effect on how farmers are doing a lot of things when it comes from just taxes and estate planning and everything else. There's going to be a lot of changes, and I don't think he campaigned on a lot of this, so it's not a big surprise, but farmers are going to have to pay attention and work with their tax advisors and work with their estate planner, because there are changes coming that will affect a lot of different things.
Of course, it's got to get through Congress, and that's the wild card right now. So.
And as we were talking earlier, it may depend on all those changes may depend on what the average salary of that congressman is too.
That's right. We've always said they always put the lifetime exemption about at the equivalent to their net worth, believe it or not. So hopefully the congressman's net worth goes up, so the lifetime exemptions for farmers who want to pass the farm down to the next generation, it will all work out for everybody. Yeah. I know this week the Friday was the last day to set the crop insurance values. So what are we looking at there?
It looks like corn's going to end up $4.58, right around there, at $11.87. It actually goes until March 1st, but there are no more trading days between now and then. So we'll see what they set it at. But it should be very, very close to those numbers. The other thing that I encourage all of our listeners to do is get a hold of your crop insurance agent as soon as possible. There are several new products out there to consider this year in crop insurance, and don't be surprised. because your crop insurance bill is going to be higher than it was last year, simply because you're insuring a lot more dollars this year with the price of commodities. These are record high prices that crop insurance has ever set.
So it's kind of a good news, bad news situation. The good news is you're going to be able to insure more dollars, but it's going to cost you more to do it.
And bankers are going to be very, very happy when you come and talk to them, when you say, hey, I'm going to buy crop insurance and I'm going to guarantee $200 profit per acre. They're going to say, let's do that. So it's a great position to be in, and these are take it home prices that you can lock in through crop insurance right now.
That's great. We had a request for a question, and Will asked it, as more and more seed companies adopt the Enlist technology into their lineups, what will continue to set Merschman Seeds apart from the competition going into the next few years? And at this point, almost every company out there, except for one in St. Louis, has access to the Enlist technology. And really what you're asking is, how are we going to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace when everybody's selling Enlist soybeans? And I can tell you, it's going to be quite easy for Merschman Seeds, to be honest with you. First of all, MS Technologies is our sister company. In other words, Merschman Seeds is one of the owners in MS Technologies. And folks like Ben, you get access to everything that's out there as far as when it comes to new soybean varieties, when it comes to the research. We have complete access to everything that's out there. We can pick whatever products we want. We can select down for our customers in a little tighter niche than what some of the national companies that might be selling in the list. In other words, they may have to have a soybean that works from Ohio to Nebraska, where we could have one that works in Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. Or north or south, whatever it is. So that is one of the unique advantages that we have, is our access to technology, and also access to technology early. We can start very quickly and produce product in large quantities. The other thing that is continuing to evolve in Merschman Seeds that sets us apart is our seed treatment. Our seed treatment is not static. It's not something that this is what we use, we're going to keep using it. In fact, we're looking at many new combinations for next year because we foresee that more phytophthora is starting to show up there, and more pythium. So we're looking at our seed treatment and saying, hey, what can we do to improve pythium and phytophthora? And that's what we've been working on the last few weeks. So there'll be announcements coming soon on what we land on. So it's going to be better than this year's seed treatment. The other thing is the ease of doing business. At Merschman Seeds, as you know, we sit down every year and say, okay, what can we do to make it easier to do business? Our billing, our ordering, our lineup, everything we do is we try to figure out how can we do it easier, more efficient, and lower cost so that flows down to our customers. And I think the most important reason why you want to do business with Merschman Seeds as in the future is our people. This is the only Ben I know and the only Turk I know, and of course my brother Henry's involved in the seed business too as one of the stockholders of Merschman Seeds. And we think our people is our advantage, from our salespeople, our truck drivers, our folks in the warehouse, our folks in the office. We think all of them contribute. And believe it or not, our best customers, when they call up on the phone, we know their voice before they say their name. Obviously, we got caller ID too, but that helps a little bit. But we know your voice when you call in, and we make ourselves accessible. So when you add it all up, there's no question about it. Farmers have a lot of choices. Statistics say the average farmer gets called on by 6 seed companies. And if they're all saying we got the best Enlist varieties, which they no doubt have good Enlist varieties, then you start looking at, okay, what's their seed treatment? What's their quality? We have all of our plants have Satake color sorters, which makes a huge difference in quality. All of our delivery trucks, we're getting ready to unveil an app on delivery for our dealers to make it more efficient, and we'll be talking about that soon. But just in general, we do we get up every day and we think about soybean seed. We think about it every day. In fact, every night, every minute of every day. So we think that we're going to compete and we're going to excel when it comes into the marketplace. So the other area that we focus on too is educating our customers. You know, Turk and Ben just spent a huge amount of this week trying to learn new information that will help farmers improve their yields. And I think the education part, in other words, how much does the company that you're doing business with, how much time do they spend bringing you new information? Even though it doesn't have anything to do with the product, but new ways to increase yields. We are farmer focused, farmer first focused, and I think that's a critical thing. Everything we do, we have to say, how will this benefit our customers? We're not saying, well, does it benefit us first, and the farmer will just have to accept it? We do it the other way around. So, Will, I hope that you see that we have a lot of value and we will continue to work hard for you. And that's the last thing I'd like to point out. Who does your seed company work for? We work for farmers. In other words, every day we get up and we work for farmers. Now, I can't answer for every other seed company out there, but I'm guessing that some of those seed companies out there work for the stockholders. And the stockholders to them are more important than the farmers. And that's the question you have to ask yourself. But we would love to be your seed business partner today and in the future because that's important to us. So with that, I think Henry's going to bug out of here unless he can cover his ears to listen to my corny jokes.
I knew it was coming.
It's coming. And last week, we were talking about how cold it was, I thought, that was kind of not an upper, it's kind of a downer. So, it's going to be 55 today here in Iowa, in southeast Iowa, which is like unbelievable. So it makes me think of spring. So I thought, well, we need to talk about spring, So if you're a gardener, I want to ask you this question. How excited was the gardener about spring? So excited, he wet his plants. So excited, he wet his plants. Okay? How do you like that one, Henry? Henry, what do you call it when worms take over the world?
Don't know.
Global warming. Global warming.
Worming.
What did the tree say to spring? What a relief. Okay? And the last one has to do with February. Does February like March? No, but April may.
I like that. Those are pretty bad this week.
Well, that one there would get the
Knew I
clicks.
should have left.
Well, anyhow, thanks for tuning in today. We hope that the information that we provided you will help your farming operation or your business be more successful. Hope you're safe. I got my shot, my COVID-19 shot yesterday, so I'm planning to be safe, and we hope you and your family are too. Thank you for your business. We'll see you next week.